Joanne and I have worked with some funny people. In Lions Players, when we were young, we all had to do jobs in the office as well as performing. We were working with a street theater company and doing plays outside, evangelistic plays, and we had to do office work too. And Joanne, that's where she learned bookkeeping. And there you see her, enjoying bookkeeping. Well, one of our friends named Sue Felt took to answering the phones. And she was funny. She would pretend to be all angry and griping about something and complaining and everything, and the phone ring, and she'd go, "Lions Players, what do you want?" It got us all cracking up in the office. Had to be there, I guess. It was funny, but it's a really important question when you think about it. What do you want? There's another question that means the same thing. It's when you go shopping. This is Art of the Lakes, by the way. I would recommend you go there and buy my paintings. But when you're shopping, someone will say, "May I help you?" And of course, that means about the same thing. What do you want? Of course, if you're encroaching on a place you shouldn't be, "May I help you" means go away. "May I help you?" the squirrel is saying. I don't think Jesus meant it the way the squirrel's saying it, though. It was a Sabbath day, and Jesus was among the crowd. And John the Baptist spotted him, and he said, "Look, there's the Lamb of God again." Because the day before, Jesus had walked right up to him. And so after John the Baptist said that, two of John's disciples took off after Jesus and started tailing him like a detective or something. And Jesus noticed this, these two guys following him, and he turns around and he says, "What do you want?" It's an important question. And it's the first words of Jesus in the Gospel of John. What do you want? But the answer that they give him is kind of odd. We better read the passage. It's John 1:35-40. And I'm reading from the Holman version, which is in that Pew Bible in front of you there. If you want to look it up, I'll give you a chance. Again the next day, John was standing with two of his disciples. And when he saw Jesus passing by, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." The two disciples heard him say this and followed Jesus. When Jesus turned and noticed them following him, he asked them, "What are you looking for?" And they said to him, "Rabbi," which means teacher, "where are you staying?" "Come and you'll see," he replied. So they went and saw where he was staying, and they stayed with him that day. It was about 10 in the morning. But again the next day, that's what he says. Starts out with that. Now, John is going to give us some consecutive days through the gospel here, and the commentators are all over the map trying to figure out what he meant because he doesn't add up. But we're just going to take it as these were important, and he's dividing the things that happened into days. Because each day brings more insight into who this person Jesus is. Reveals his glory more and more until he gets to Cana in Galilee, where he totally reveals his glory, and the disciples believe for sure who he is. But it all started in our previous passage we covered last Sunday. By the way, if you want to catch up with these, I put them on our website, and it refers you to YouTube, and you can listen to sermons if you want to. In the previous passage, John the Baptist identified the identity of Jesus, announced his authority. And now he sees Jesus walking by in the crowd. And he turns the attention of his disciples towards Jesus. And this time is the third testimony of John the Baptist. We saw the first one and the second one, and now this is the third time John the Baptist is giving testimony. And as I said a few weeks ago, or maybe last week, the Gospel of John is presented as a series of testimonies, witnesses, almost like a court of law, to prove that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. So this is John the Baptist giving witness, and this is his third witness. And on this day, his two disciples leave him and follow Jesus. The tense of the verb follow here is very interesting because it means they left and never came back. They followed, and that was it. They never went back to John. Well, John, you'd think, would be kind of upset about that. But his whole point, he said, was that Jesus should increase and he should decrease. And so he wanted these disciples to go follow Jesus. He knew that was the right way. He opened the door. But the interesting thing is here, these disciples, and even John the Baptist, may not have really understood what this was all about yet. John was excited. He knew the Lamb of God to take away the sins of the world. He knew that much. But these disciples of his, they didn't really understand a whole lot about this. They wanted to see what John was so excited about, so they decided to follow Jesus. They wanted to learn from him. Now, later on, the other Gospels, the other three, which tell kind of a different story, that's later on. This, what John is telling us here, is way earlier. It's not in Galilee, it's in Judea, in Jerusalem, before he went back to Galilee. Back in Galilee, he's going to call them to be fishers of men, but right now, they're just following him, leaving John the Baptist. We don't quite understand this disciple thing, but we'll be talking about it a bit later in some other sermons. But right now, we're starting in Judea. So, two of John's disciples decide to follow Jesus. Now, the other Gospels, like I said, don't have this story. Why did John think this one was so important that he should put it in there? It's pivotal to this author. Well, it's like this. Say you were invited to the White House to meet the president. Now, regardless of what you think about presidents, any president. Do you think it would matter to you? How about if when you were in the presence of the president, he offered you a job that completely turned your life around in a new direction that transformed what you ever thought you could do? Would you remember the moment you met him? Yeah, it'd be burned into your memory because that was the beginning. And of course, that's what's happening here. This is the beginning of the discipleship of John, the author of the Gospel. That's why it's so important to him. All right, now these disciples, why were they following Jesus? They were curious. And so Jesus turned around and noticed them. I love that. I know this scenario is kind of interesting to me. You see these two guys, it's a crowd, right? And Jesus is up there, and these two guys are following him. And he's walking along and sensed somebody was back there and turns around and sees them. And what do they think? He's looking at us. He took the initiative. He could have just kept walking. But Jesus turned around and asked him an important question. What are you looking for? What do you want? What are you seeking? They all mean the same thing. This was the most important words the author of this gospel had ever heard. What do you want? Jesus asked him. What are you looking for? What do you want out of life? Jesus asked him. And he asks us the same thing, doesn't he? What do you want? That question has gone down through the centuries of human history. It's always the big question in our lives. Or the Declaration of Independence. Okay, this was my 4th of July sermon. It's a little early, but this is where it falls, so that's what we're going to do. So, pretend you're the 4th of July, it's coming up. But the Declaration of Independence has a basic answer to that question. What do you want? Listen to what it says. All men, all people, are created equal. They are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Those people wanted to be free of tyranny. They wanted to be happy. They wanted a safe environment to live in. They wanted to live, to be healthy. It's basic, fundamental, foundational, bedrock wants. We want life. We want freedom. We want happiness. And we want to be safe. Yeah, a Cadillac Escalade would be nice too, but those four. Everybody wants those four things. John's disciples, did they ask him, well, what do we want? We want life, and we want freedom, and we want so that the Romans don't oppress us, and we want to live in safety so we don't have to worry about them. And we really just want to be happy, Jesus. Is that what they said? No, this strange question. They said, where are you staying? What's up with that? What do you want, he says. Well, where are you staying? It's like he came to the second chapter of a book he hadn't started reading. So we need to understand this. We need to understand what's going on here. This is a Hebrew custom. It's what the rabbis would say. This strange question. Where are you staying? Okay, let me explain it like this. We worked in another company together, and the boss hated hallway conversations. We worked in a company that had projects with lots of ways to mess everything up. And he didn't want us to depend on casual conversations in the middle of the hallway. He wanted us to sit down, be serious, and think about what we were telling each other. It's the same thing when, so let's say here in Battle Lake, you're trying to create a better business environment, and you meet somebody down at the shoreline, and you casually say something, and you expect them to follow through with it, but they forgot because it was this casual conversation. You want to have a sit down and discuss it and make it memorable in some way. Write it down. That's what the disciples were asking Jesus when they asked him, where are you staying? They didn't want to have a discussion there in the middle of the courtyard. They wanted to go to where he was staying at the time. And this meeting with Jesus stood out in John's mind. It said they stayed all day because it was the 10th hour. Now, if you're counting Roman time, which apparently the Holman is, that's 10 o'clock in the morning. If you're counting Hebrew time, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If it's 10 o'clock in the morning, they stayed all day. If it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the Hebrew time goes midnight to midnight, so they stayed all the rest of that day and all night too, having like a dorm room conversation with Jesus. Either way, they wanted to have a serious conversation with Jesus, find out why John was calling him the Lamb of God and all that. What did that all mean? He was standing nearby, and they walked and they talked all the way there. You can walk from the Jordan River, if that's where they were. I don't know where they were. But if you could walk to Jerusalem, maybe staying at Mary and Lazarus and Martha's house, that's about a day's walk. They could have walked there from 10 in the morning, if that's what it was. But on that walk, and during that day, the disciples began to change. Already they began to change. What was Jesus' question? What do you want? The question began to change. It began to change into, who do you want? Instead of what do you want, it's who do you want? They began to understand a little bit about who it was they were talking to. The answer is not a number. It's not a fact. Not a thing. The answer to what do you want is a person. The answer was sitting with them at dinner. What an insignificant beginning. to what has now become over 2.2 billion people on the planet who are still sitting with dinner with Jesus. Pretty much all over the world. All of them answering the question, who are you looking for? Now let's look at Jesus' answer to their question. But we're going to change it from what are you seeking or what are you looking for to just what I've been saying, what do you want? What do you want? And here's Jesus' answer, which is equally strange. Come and see, he says. Okay, this is a phrase used by rabbis as well. This means, come, let's learn together. Jesus wasn't going to launch into a theological lecture on substitutional atonement regarding the Lamb of God. No. And Jesus didn't give directions on how to get to where he was staying while he did something else. He didn't even tell them the town where he was staying. He just said, come and see. I love that too. Jesus' second sentence in the Gospel of John. Come and see. Everybody has the same question. Jesus was walking with them, answering their questions. Everybody wants help, life, real life, not miserable life. Everybody wants life. He knew that. Everybody wants to be free. He knew that the Hebrews wanted to be free of Roman tyranny. He knew that. But he knew there was other freedom from, well, you know, when I was a kid, when I heard about this freedom thing, that Jesus gives you real freedom, and going like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Because to me, real freedom is to do what I want to do, right? So if I want to go out, and as a kid, I'd smoke and drink and chew and or whatever, you know. I should be able to do that. I'm free. But now I have realized as an older guy, there are things that hurt you that you really want to do. And according to what the gospel tells us, Jesus sets you free. You don't have to do that. Maybe your body's screaming at you, making you want to do something. I used to work with addicts in a halfway house, and their bodies would literally just drag them away. But you're free, Jesus says. He's given you real freedom. You've been forgiven, and you've been forgiven before you ever do anything. You just are free of all that. Move on. Isn't that good? Jesus knew that. And happiness is what people want. And they want to be safe. Jesus knew that. We want to be safe. So how do we point to Jesus? We've been talking about this a little bit. About blessing people that we see. And he gave us the assignment to do it. And you know, I talked about it last week. We've been told to witness, and it scares me half to death because it's like sales pitch, and I'm not good at that, and it's embarrassing, and that's not what it is at all. It's just, look at what Jesus did. The first thing he did is he found out what they wanted, and then he says, come and see. Come and see. It's so normal and natural. You just walk with people in their lives. Well, I guess we'd say make friends. But as soon as you say make friends with an ulterior motive, that's not a friend. You just walk with people because you like them, because you want to be with them, because you care about them. You walk with people just like Jesus did. You take some time to care. And when the time is right, like John the Baptist, you notice what he did? When the time was right, he just pointed. There he is. The Lamb of God will take away the sins of the world. When the time was right. The answer to what do you want? The answer to that, that's Jesus. Yeah, it sounds awfully superstitious. Sounds like an awful pat answer. You've seen these bumper stickers? The answer is Jesus. And after those bumper stickers, another bunch of bumper stickers came out and said, "Yeah, so what was the question?" But what is the answer to life, freedom, happiness, and safety? It really is Jesus. And when you say that, of course, it means the whole way of living, the whole lack of feeling guilty about everything. You don't have to feel guilty about anything anymore. It's gone. What a good news that is. Jesus is the answer. And he still says to us and to people we meet, come and see. Just come and see. I'm not going to teach you anything. I'm going to show you. Just going to show you. Jesus will walk with you and talk with you. And you'll understand. Who do you want?